we've heard for like a couple of months now, or a couple of weeks at the very least, that USA Network and WWE have been thinking about moving NXT to Tuesday nights. The reports have been that USA Network have been very unhappy with the NXT ratings being beaten by AEW on a near weekly basis. And so they were looking to try and find a ways to shake that up. That came in the forms of changing up the writing team, changing up sort of the booking of the show. And now it looks to be that one of the next moves is to move it off Wednesday nights and move it to Tuesday nights. Because this week they were on Tuesday nights, they're on Tuesday next week. And man, the ratings for this week's NXT were to the moon. They were through the roof, baby. Like they were really, really good. Meltzer reported on Wrestling Observer Radio from day one, every single person knew that if they put NXT on television on Thursday or Tuesday, it would draw significantly more than it would on Wednesday. They weren't put on television to build a brand. They were put on television to make sure that AEW went out of business. And obviously in January, things changed. In January, TNT announced that they were extending out their deal with AEW, including adding in a second show. WrestleVotes have tweeted, over the past month or so, discussions have transpired regarding NXT moving off Wednesday nights. The numbers over the next 2 weeks might have some impact on this decision, which has been backed up by SRS on Fightful Select, saying the USA floated the idea and WWE have been receptive. So, Denise, what do you think? Do you think that NXT should move from Wednesday nights, end the Wednesday night war, and move to Tuesday nights permanently?
So given that the numbers, they just don't lie. I mean, NXT's ratings were up to 849,000. So it's like almost, I mean, think about it this way. So there's two perceptions. This is what I'm trying to say out here. There's a short-term perception and there's a long-term perception right now of whether or not what would happen if NXT moved over. So the short-term perception is obviously like, oh, if they switch dates, it's going to be like, oh, they sort of look bad because AEW didn't move dates. They moved their dates because they couldn't beat AEW. So that would be like the short-term perception, I think, of what people would see this as. However, long term, I think that it would be a lot better for them to actually move their dates because, I mean, the numbers, they don't lie. If they're getting bigger numbers going on a Tuesday instead of a Wednesday, then why not? However, I do know that obviously that the reason, and you just said it, that the reason why they put NXT on Wednesdays was to combat AEW. However, I just think that it does not look good that they're not winning up against AEW. So I think that given that their numbers went up, there is a lot of pros to them actually moving their date.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. Like the report always was that NXT, obviously it was a Wednesday night product when it was on the network, but it was moved to USA not to really beat AEW, but to like hurt their ratings and kind of like take viewers away from their show. And I don't think that's particularly happened. Like what we've sort of found, like looking at the ratings patterns, was that NXT viewers were just watching NXT. And AEW viewers were sort of switching over during the ad breaks, but it wasn't quite reciprocated. But it hasn't been like the dominating thing that I think they thought it might have been, because they are the WWE product. So AEW have gone out there, they've won most of the weeks. I'd say probably like 90% of the weeks, I would say. And this week's show, like not only did they draw massive, much bigger ratings than they normally would do, importantly, they were up to a 0.26 in the 18 to 49 demographic. They finished 10th overall in that category on cable, which is the highest the show has finished since the first couple of weeks on USA when they were running unopposed. And the rating was up nearly 10% from last week. It's one of the highest they've had since December last year. So you put it there, Scott Steiner said it best. The numbers don't lie. And
exactly.
And like USA are they're looking at their investors, they're looking at their advertisers who are buying adverts on this show that they said, oh, it's going to get these numbers, and it hasn't. So moving it to a Tuesday night where they're going to appease those advertisers and WWE can appease USA and they can work out this nice relationship, I think it just makes complete sense. As you said, as a long-term investment, I think it's completely the wiser move.
Yeah, and it sucks though, because obviously if they move, people are going to be like, all the people that are anti-WWE are going to be like, haha, does that mean AEW won? And nobody wants to have that perception on their back, but I just do think that would be the smarter idea, especially if the network wants it and they feel that they can get more hits out of it. And, I could only assume that WWE doesn't want AEW to hit that 1 million viewership mark. But here's the thing, if they hit it, that doesn't mean that there's not a possibility that they can hit it if they were to switch dates. And then also, like, I was thinking back when Impact was on Spike, they had very, very loyal viewers that were coming in. They were always hitting the 1 million mark, 1.3. It didn't matter if they were, they had to change dates because of a sporting game or if it was a holiday. They always had that very, very dedicated fan base. And I don't necessarily think that them having those high numbers took away from WWE. So if anything, if AEW were to get these high numbers, I don't necessarily think it takes away from WWE, because you still have all of those fans that are interested in the product. And it was so much easier to watch AEW and NXT on separate nights. Like, it made it so much easier for me personally, because when I've tried the double screen watching at the same time, and I find myself missing half of each show, and then I have to go back and watch the parts that I didn't catch necessarily, or I only paid attention to 50% of it because I was watching something else. So if anything, for me as a fan, it makes it that much easier to have it on separate nights, to watch the product differently. And I just also think that, obviously too, the different demographics that they're attracting is a big issue, because they're not WWE is not attracting that younger audience. And so I think that necessarily has to be fixed more within the actual product versus just changing dates.
Exactly, yeah. So like the young audience, that 18 to 49 demographic, which I'm still within. I'm still within that 18 to 49. Although I'm inching closer to that top bracket. They were choosing to watch AEW over NXT. They were switching over during the ad breaks, but the bulk of the show they had picked to watch AEW. But what we've seen now is moving to Tuesday nights. That AEW audience were just watching the show on Tuesday. They were just watching the wrestling on Tuesday because they want to watch NXT, but they were being told you only have an option to watch either one. Like you, I've only tried to do the dual screen thing once. And that was the January 4th, 2010 episodes of Raw and Impact, when Impact first went on to Monday. And it was the big, like when RVD debuted and Jeff Hardy was this, that, and the other, Ric Flair. And it was impossible to watch. Like, I just found myself in the end, like I watched the Brett Sean segment at the start of the show, and then I just ended up watching Impact.
Exactly. You end up watching more of one than the other.
Yeah, it's I can't do it. Speaking of Impact, NXT moving to Tuesday nights has had a bit of an impact on that show. According to PW Torch, the September 1st episode of Impact, which was going, head to head effectively with NXT, drew 102,000 viewers, which was down from the 171,000 viewers that the show had the previous week. And the show has been like averaging about 155 for the last 8 weeks or so. The lowest they've had was 134. So turns out Impact moving to Tuesday nights hasn't had a detrimental effect on Impact.
Oh, yeah, no, for sure. But here's the thing, though, is that right now I feel that even though Impact is a great product and they've been, they're very, very consistent with the work and they've been consistent for years. However, I just feel that they are underneath the radar of AEW and WWE right now. The ratings, they just don't compare. So it's kind of like, I think at this point right now, they're getting by with the buzz that they have right now and trying to make the best of it. But I don't necessarily think that they, line up right now with AEW and WWE. So it's almost like you can't, it's gonna hurt them to lose that 50K or whatever or so every week. But I think at this point, there's just such a big difference in the viewership that it kind of just doesn't, it has to take somebody's going to have to take the L, and it's going to have to be them if they were to go on Tuesdays. But I do think that the only way for Impact to even just, get back up there would have to be to get on a better network.
Yeah, I think you might be right on that one. And actually, from a sort of purely selfish perspective, running this channel or helping run this channel when you've got two big shows that are both running on Wednesday nights was a pain in the ass to review the following day. Like, we found no real good way of appeasing the NXT fans and the AEW fans who wanted both their reviews done. We found kind of no way to do it. And like, YouTube has this 3 upload limit of notifications where if you load more than 3 videos in a day, they'll just stop sending out notifications for the rest of that day. So like with the news and the live streams, this and the other, all of a sudden we just found like our NXT numbers were just dropping off because it was the last upload of the day. And
wow.
so it moving to Tuesday nights is going to be so much easier for WrestleTalk to manage its output.
There you go. It's going to help everybody. And I just think like, hey, might as well do it, and they can start getting bigger numbers. And here's the thing, though, is that I think so many people, like when AEW came along and it started being AEW versus NXT, AEW versus NXT, I think a lot of people, a lot of fans forgot how passionate they were about NXT. I mean, I remember going to the shows where people were like, this is the best thing that's ever happened in wrestling. And I'm like, where is that passion? Like, you guys were watching the NXT product. So maybe some of those people that may have dropped off and are just AEW now, maybe they can also come back and also watch NXT, because the passion was there at one point. And I mean, it's not like NXT is not a good show, because they have a great show and, you know, great wrestling on there. So I feel like this could definitely benefit both and just benefit wrestling as a whole.
You mentioned earlier as well, I completely agree. And you mentioned earlier that NXT, if it continues to grow, might be able to get over that 1 million mark. And so can Dynamite at this rate. Like, Dynamite ran on Wednesday nights unopposed this week. 928,000 viewers, a 0.36 rating in the 18 to 49 demographic. Like, that's big. That's an increase of 115,000 views from the previous Thursday, and a huge spike in last week's 0.29 in the demo. It finished 8th overall. Like, Dynamite's first number that they did on TNT was 1.4 million. Like, 928,000 is not a million miles away from hitting that 1.4 million again. And if they're running unopposed, and one of the things that Meltzer pointed out from that demo is that all the women that were watching the Thursday and the Saturday shows hadn't moved over to the Wednesday night. So if they're able to move the women, like the viewership, across that Wednesday night thing, they could easily get back over that 1 million mark, or more back towards that 1.4 they started with.
Yeah. And, you know, here's another interesting thing. So, you know, I have a friend that is, you know, sure, only WWE, you know, team WWE sort of thing. And, you know, I know that he tuned in to watch AEW just this week, just to sort of see what the landscape is, what's going on. So, I mean, this is just one person, obviously, but how many others are probably like that, where it could be either vice versa. It could be like a WWE fan that's like, you know what, let me tune in to AEW and see what all the fuss is about. And it could even be an AEW fan that could be like, you know what, let me see what NXT is doing. So even if you're like, oh, I'm team this, I'm team that, I feel like the curiosity is always there for everyone. So you might find yourself tuning into the other show and being like, I actually enjoy this. Let me continue watching. So this could be a benefit for, like I just said, for both people, for both brands.
We could stop being Team WWE, Team AEW, and we'll be Team Wrestling.
There you go, because we need more wrestling fans. That's the truth right there.
For a second, I thought you were going to say we need more wrestling on TV. And I was like, that's the last thing we need, Denise.
No more, because I am barely keeping up, okay? I've gotten to the point where I'm like, okay, I haven't watched this. I need to get on that, because if not, I'm not going to know what's happening at this show. And everything connects somehow.
If I take a week off work, like when I get back from it, I'm like, oh my God, there's too much for me to actually catch up on. I'm just going to basically just have to call that a dead week. And I will just... I can't, there's no time in the world for me to catch up with this and watch all the new stuff as well.